Great to be here with you today. Thanks for coming and joining us. We've got a pretty full agenda, as you just saw from Charles there. I'm delighted to be moderating this keynote panel, and I'm joined on stage by 4 experts from the industry who are going to really help us look at some different aspects. So I have to my left here Anna Abu Asaf, who is Global Director of Rooms and Guest Experience at Kerzner International. An amazing suite of luxury brands there. So welcome, Anna. It's great to have you with us today.
Thank you, Jamie. It's very good to be with you. Thank you.
Very good. And next we have Tarek Valani, who is an independent consultant and former SVP of Support Services at Accor. And so again, huge breadth of brands in a large, very large, one of our largest industry players. So welcome, Tarek.
Thank you, Jamie, and good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Next up, I have Siegfried. Siegfried, let me get your name right, Neerhaus, who is from H World International and VP and Head of Development. Again, a large hotel company with a large suite of brands, so bringing a really interesting perspective. Welcome, Siegfried.
Thank you for having me, and good morning to all.
Very good. And then last but not least, I have Laurent Voivenel, who is, now you have a lot under your remit, Laurent, so SVP of both Operations and Development for EMAI and also for HR and talent development at Swiss Bell Hotel International.
Good morning, all.
Morning and welcome. So, you can see we've got great experience here on the panel, and our theme today is the future. You know, where does innovation play a role in guest experience? And what I wanted to do is just start by just getting a perspective from each of you. Just understand, so what have you seen in terms of guest behavior changing, and what do guests expect that's different from maybe you know, how it was 5 or 10 years ago? And maybe I'll start with you, Anna.
Sure. I think that at the core of it, the focus is still how to make sure that the guests will show up and just pay and not to have to work for their experience. But I think that as the personal values of the travelers and the tourists change, also the values of the hospitality and the hotel industry changes as well. So we have more high net worth individuals who are younger now, Gen Z, millennials, and of course we have to adapt to that. So the guests are, they expect us to be quicker, they are more eco-friendly, they are more sustainability focused. They want experiential experiences or experiential stays. And so you see that the shape of the service and the guest experience changes with that, of course. And on another note also, you have new trends that are emerging, for example, and we're going to touch base on that later on in the conversation, the multi-generational travel that is really shaping the future of how we do business. And of course, AI. I mean, AI is changing everything for the time being in service and the guest experience.
Very good. Thanks, Hannah. What about you, Tarek? I know, you know, with your background at Accor, it must be quite different in the different brands, but also, you know, from a technology side, what things are you seeing that are changing?
So I think, you know, if we put the technology aside for a second, because in my opinion, it's more of an enabler as opposed to a driver. But I think the key consideration or key factors that I've seen, when you look at luxury, it's about personalization or hyper-personalization. And when you look at the different type of traveler, so is it about efficiency? You know, is it a family? Is it a businessman, woman? Depends on that, which drives what they're looking for. And yes, having seen the portfolio from luxury all the way down to economy, the guest that stays in each one of those segments has a very different view as to what is important to them. And so I think, to summarize it, in my opinion, would be hyper-personalization all the way down to efficiency, and in terms of, having the basics done right, having them done efficiently is what I would say.
Interesting. Well, we'll come back to that a bit, I think, in terms of that hyper-personalization theme. I think that's really interesting. Siegfried, how about you? What are you seeing that's different and changing?
I mean, the theme guest experience, enhancing guest experience, is something which we try to do since we are in the industry, right? So this is something not new, but what you say, what is changing? I think the big thing is changing is, from a bigger picture, is the flow of information and data you have for customers in order to reach whatever we want to reach, and the technology is important. Guest experience is important. Guest expectation is important. So all that, the ground is know your brand, that's what you said, know your brand, where you're working for, and we all have 30 brands in our portfolio, 40 brands in our portfolio, but every brand stands for something very special, very unique, and you need to know, wherever you're working, what is the USP and the DNA of your brand. This is the first thing. Second is the digitalization of the whole customer experience can go very far, right? We have brands where we talk about a staff ratio of 0.2, where everything is digital, where you have hardly any staff members, and the guests are super happy with that, right? Then when you go to a company like Kurtz now, you don't want to see robots, you want to see people who are there and facing the customer and having this ultimate unique experience for the guest, what he is expecting for, based on the data you received. The problem I see in the industry and the trend is that your overflow of information. And when I see some team members who are, when I ask them a question and they send me a screenshot and tell me, here, please find attached something coming from AI, then the way the problem starts, right? So there is no way of individualization something if you print out something from AI, right? So I think how the individual team members are handling the information and translating it into a customer experience, this is for me the biggest challenge what I see. So it's industry working for people with people, so it's still a people industry.
Very interesting. And that's a good segue, actually, into you, Laurent, because you look after the people side of the business as well as development, two different ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, indeed. Actually, that's why I was not participating to your last call, because I was with our executive board looking at the strategy for the 10 years of the company, and it was a kind of an interesting discussion between the new generations, which were all AI, digital, which we need to have, and maybe the older generations, which will say, okay, let's not forget that digital is okay, but you know, we are in the hotel industry, and we are still a people business, okay? Which basically I was cut in the between. Now, you know, everything has been said here. We all been looking after the customer's experience, but I think that we need to look also at a couple of things which changed drastically, you know, over the past few years. And I'm not talking about technology now, because we know that we are going to talk about technology and data later on. I just want to jump on what Siegfried said earlier. Sometimes too much information kills the informations, because the people are not trained in the millions of data that we are getting to get exactly the one which is really relevant. And Anna touched base also on customer experience, because obviously everybody knows Gessner, it's one of the best groups in the world when it comes to customer satisfaction. Having said so, I was reading an article not too long ago, and I'm reading my data here. American Express Travel found that 78% of the global travelers want to have a positive impact on the community during their visit. What is happening here is quite simple. Baby boomers, like me, are going to be out of business in a couple of years. They are going to be replaced by millennials. And the millennial, by 2030, will represent 75% of the corporate travel. If we, as an hotelier, we don't learn how to cater, basically, the needs of the millennium to the corporate business, we simply lose the opportunity, you know, to do our job. So technology is going to help us, but first we need to understand what is the needs of the millennium. We need to understand what is the need, for example, of the Gen Z, which will be coming on the market, number one. We have plus minus today 2.6 billion travelers. By 2035, you will have 4 billion. What are we going to do in order to cater the needs of the 1.6 billion which are coming up on the market? Mostly they will be coming from India, China, because that's where basically the passports are getting loose and looser. So we need to understand not only what we have now, but we need also to prepare for the future. And the future is obviously technology, but definitely guest experience need to be put in the center of every single organizations. But let's not forget again, we are a people business. And like Siegfried said, we may have a 0.2 employees per room for some business, but when it comes to luxury, you will remain basically at a much higher level. I don't know how many employees you have, Anna, at Kessler, but I'm sure that must be around 1.5 or what, so something like that. So, or even maybe 2 employees per room occupied. So we are in the people business, and if we don't understand the people, if we don't know how to communicate with people, if the millennials don't know how to communicate to the Gen Z, that's where basically you will need AI or ChatGPT to help you out.
Very good. So that's interesting, a reflection on some of the people side of things. I'm going to ask you, Siegfried, when because you look after development, when you're looking at projects, are there things that you have to react to now when you're looking at new projects from a guest experience point of view that might be different from they were, say, 10 years ago when, looking at new projects?
One of the most important thing, I think, when you talk to owners, developers, one thing is that you match first the brand with the location, with the customer expected to come and visit the place. This is the first thing, and then you have to set up a scene of what is the future client expecting. This is one thing. The most important or difficult thing is to know what the customer wants in 4 years' time, which literally you can guess. You can give some statistics and everything is available, but do we really know what is the digital landscaping in the Middle East looking in 4 years? We don't know, right? We work with a company, and Laurent as well, for Asian companies, and wherever destination you are, you believe you know. You believe we are the best, we can. But if you look into other parts of the world, they are much more advanced than what we are, especially when it comes to digitalization and using all this technology in the hotels. So the challenge is that what is a customer wants in 4 years' time, you don't know, so you have to make sure that provisions are there. First thing, provisions of basic things as cabling, etc., in order to use the latest technology, right? When it comes to basic things, all the time the owner asks me, what TV should I buy? I like LG, and I ask this. You don't know. You don't know. You just need to know a size approximately in order to make sure that you have that provision behind, making sure whatever you have today available as information is made available to the developer. And when you get closer to opening a project, then you need to activate. Yeah. Don't start and doing the procurement phase too fast, because we have all seen some delays in projects, and yes, you have to take into consideration when you develop hotels. And you have really to have your timetable, and putting the dot into a timetable when you know, or when you believe to know when the opening of a hotel is happening, right? So first provisions, second, don't act too fast, because we are in the Middle East. It's a wonderful destination, right? We are super happy to be here, where we have the latest and the best of the hospitality industry, but you need to be super alert, super attentive. Don't give answers too fast, and don't give answers if you really don't know the ultimate and latest, for example, technology or way of building today the buildings. Right? We talk about green development everywhere. This needs to be taken care of. Right? Today, to build a hotel where you don't have sensors, where you don't have whatever, LED lights, etc., etc. If you don't have that, then you're out of the game.
Yeah. That's really interesting, and in that it's almost adaptability, so having the enabling capability there, but not necessarily knowing exactly what guests are going to want by the time, because of the lead time in an opening, which is tough to deal with. Anna, what about you're at the other end in that you look after the operations and the people. How does it work today? What sort of things are you finding in terms of change and innovation in terms of how you actually help the hotels operate?
Well, I think that Laurent really focused a lot on the fact that we're a people business and that this is the core of our business at the end of the day. And of course, we all agree with this in this room, because this is what the hospitality industry is all about. But for the luxury hotels specifically, the luxury brands specifically, we find that there's been a lot of resistance towards the change that we can bring to the table when it comes to technology, AI, because we go back and we say that, okay, we are a people business, we want to maintain the human element. And today, if you look at what you have with you and what are the tools that you can use for your people or for your analytics, and how are you using the data that you have, we're really behind. Because we really focus a lot on we're a people's business, so we close these opportunities that can come to us that we can take advantage of. And again, I agree with Siegfried that today, for example, when we're developing a project, we need to look 5 years ahead, we need to look 4 years ahead, and decide ourselves what the trends are going to be and be trendsetters. This is what we are very passionate about in Kerzner specifically. So we find ourselves that we're deciding and designing how the guest experience is going to be. And we're very excited that there is this wind of change where there is more open-mindedness towards how can we harness technology, both for the experience and for the services that are going to be provided. So how are we going to be using that in terms of the hotel as a commodity and design of the hotel, but also with the services. And again, I want to just focus that it's going to be the human experience and the human touch will be at the center of all of that. We do have a lot of opportunities to support our teams to deliver the service in a much more efficient way and in a much seamless way.
Yeah, that's really, and I'm going to come back to this point around how technology is used and what the expectations are, and I want to ask Tarek about that in a moment. But just before I do, Laurent, when you think about the operation, and I'm just thinking about that sort of people component, are you finding that hiring, the way you hire people and attract people into the industry has changed? I know during pandemic, for example, we saw a lot of people leave the industry naturally because we shut down effectively and go off to do other things. How are you finding now that you can bring people in, and is that a different experience for the people today than it was before?
Wow, that's $1 million question. You said that we have how many brands representing here in this room today? I saw that on Charles. I think it's 30 or 40 brands. And basically, we are all after the same thing. How to attract the talent. You know, as I said, Jamie, I was at the conference over there, and one of the things that was talent development. How do you attract talent? How do you recruit the people now? Is it different than what it used to be 4 years ago or 10 years ago? The answer is yes, of course, yes. Technology is one part of it, but you can teach a lot of things over there, but you cannot teach attitude. You can teach skills, but you need to have the basic desire of being in the hospitality. For example, Swiss Bell Hotel, for example, we have 150 hotels in 20 countries. Okay, and everything that we are doing, actually, it's one of the project that was given by the company, is to plan the structure of talent development like we used to do in all the big companies. Is how can you take someone and you can bring it up to 2 levels up within 3 years in order for him to become a general manager in 5 or 6. So that's my plan basically for the next few months to put in place. We are all after the same thing. People are important, and not everybody is fitted basically for 5-star property. There is nothing wrong to be working in a 2 or 3-star property. Most of our property in the company, basically 50% are all in the 3 and 4 stars. Actually, no, 3 and 4 stars represent 73% of our portfolio. The rest are basically 2 stars and 5 stars. So does that mean that the associate working for Swiss Bell in 3 and 4 stars will not be able to work in Kerzner Group? The answer is no. Yeah, of course they could. If they have the right attitude and the desire to work because they have the knowledge and the passion basically for that, that's not an issue. But we do recruit the people definitely on the attitude And when it's very, very specific, obviously, we need obviously the technical skill. But the difficulty is to attract really the talent, because everybody is looking at the development. I don't know how many hotels you have on the pipeline of development, but I'm basically going to triple the size of the company basically within 5 years. Okay, I'm talking about tripling, you know, I mean, I have 150, you are going to have 450 hotels within 5 years. Where do I am going to get the talent? And if we cannot grow them from inside, we'd have to steal it to the competitions, and that's increase basically the cost, because that's the way it works. So retention is important, but hiring the right person is even more. Hiring a good person is never too expensive, but hiring a wrong one is always too much.
Yeah, yeah.
I just want to add something here. You know, when you speak to stakeholders, when you speak to the board of directors, they look at the figures and they look at the P&L. And I think here around the table, we're all professionals and we love the industry, and we have to make sure that others and the future generation are loving our industry. So I think what we do, and I think Laurent is doing the same, and when we go to different destinations, let it be the Saudization, the Omanization, the UAEization, we need to help the destinations in order to bring the talents up. Right, to have a straight collaboration or strategic partnership with schools is important. It's important that the general managers here look at how much budget are you putting into a training and development for your staff. Right? Everyone thinks about the food cost and beverage cost and other costs. Please look into the human side of that. We forget that. We don't give the importance that it should be. That's what I really feel in the industry, and I encourage everyone, really do the extra mile to make sure that we have a new generation of people who love the industry and serve people.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point. And so we're hearing this theme about, you know, customer expectation is higher than ever. We've got new audiences, and of course, all the way through this, the last mile, the last inch, if you like, of the journey, I should use metrics, shouldn't I, is still humans delivering it, and how do you do that? But Tarek, let me turn to you a little bit on that theme, because there's a lot of conversation around what role does digital and technology play in customer experience and digital, and I'm sure that varies, doesn't it, depending on whether you're staying in a mainstream brand or a top-end luxury. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Sure. So, you know, I mean, there's been a couple of interesting points raised here. So when we talk about guest centricity, that's one part. You talk about the data, and then at the beginning was the mention of AI. I think the key understanding is that we are a people-first industry. And this is where we need to have the understanding that augmenting tech is where we need to look, because that actually helps us to deliver. So you're not replacing the people part, you're augmenting it with technology to actually deliver a far superior service. And that can become, or it is irrelevant about the segment, that becomes your use case, right? And to the point of people and training, it's a classic example where technology plays a big part, because we said we need to develop people, we need to train people, but how are we doing that? And we also talked about millennials, Gen Z, etc. They learn very differently to what we are used to. And a classic example I can give you is where a couple of years ago, there was a 16-year-old that I know that went and did an internship in a hotel in London, and very eager to learn and join the industry. But as we know, we have 0.2 employees to one person in some places in the world, and there was nobody to teach her the ropes. And she got a little bit fed up, but eventually somebody did find the time to teach her. And what did she do? She was trying to run the point of sales in a restaurant, right? And it's small hotel, one outlet. What she did was she actually recorded on her phone every single part of that person training her, so that she could go back and refer to it and teach herself. And this is where we have also this gap that we need to understand with technology. There's guest experience, there's personalization, but there's also training. And if we get those elements right by augmenting and using the tech in the right way, we can catapult the industry without losing the essence of the industry.
Yeah. Yes, that's a really nice example of a different way of using technology, and also an illustration of how learning has changed, and this idea of sort of bite-sized learning, TikTok learning. Actually, we probably need to think more and more about it.
If I may just add one more thing, which is quite important about the data, because everyone talks about AI, and I need to mention this. It's not a silver bullet. If you don't have the data structured in the right way, in a way that can be used, you're not going to get the benefit out of AI, right? Hospitality traditionally has gathered so much data, but what do we do with it? And another small little story. I read an article this morning. There is a PMS company out there. Out of respect for the others in the room, I will keep it anonymous and just say it's known to be a unicorn in the industry. They released a feature that basically allows front office agents or anybody in the hotel to use an AI agent to understand and get a snapshot of the guest at any point in time. So if you think about it, a guest has walked up to you, you're capturing preferences. Typically you needed an integration to CRM, to this, to this, to this. But now, they've given you the ability to see that guest and everything about them in one shot. And this removes the complexity and actually uses technology the way it should be used.
Interesting. Yeah, so that point around the sort of delivering in the moment service and using technology to deliver it. Anna, when you think about your area in terms of Kerzner, you've got the highest end luxury brands. Presumably customers expect that you're looking them in the eye and not looking at your screen when you're dealing with them. Customers, guests, I flip between the two, but guests, tell me a little bit about what your thinking is on that, in terms of how your colleagues in the front line are using technology, but at the same time keeping their eye on the guest.
Well, they keep their eye on the guests all the time, because at the end of the day, what happens is that when you have the correct systems, when you're using the data correctly, like Tariq just suggested and said, this becomes integrated in the operation of our team. So they don't have to think about it. If you think about the companies that deliver the best service, it's the companies that have their colleagues just show up and do their work and not even think about what they need to deliver. So again, we go back to how are we using the data, how are we using the systems, and how is this presented to them, and how on a day-to-day basis it's being used for them to actually take advantage of and deliver to the guests. But at the same time, the human element is so important, because the training that happens in the luxury and ultra-luxury is the guest is the most important person in front of you. The guest is the only person who can change a standard. The guest is the only person who can shape the experience. So the focus would be not on this system, the CRM, and most of the times, and in Kerzner and other ultra-luxury companies, when it's presented to the colleague, it's never presented that this is a CRM or this is a system, and you need to actually collect this data so that we can make sure that we can increase the revenue or our value in the market. It's presented in a way that the guest is at the center of the experience. We want you to be interested in the guest. We want you to collect this information so that you can present ultra-personalized service. And this is how we get our teams to buy into it and to have this passion. But I'll close with this. The brand itself plays a very, very big role in actually making sure that our colleagues who work with us know that they have a personal brand and they feel that their personal brand is aligned with the brand that they work with. So you stop working for the company and you feel that you have a mission. And this is where everything comes together very naturally, and you start collecting the information or delivering this ultra-luxury service, because it's actually paying off on a personal level for your career.
I like that. I like that. I think that's really smart. So
I just
going
want to add something here,
go
because
ahead.
it's a bit scary all the time where the industry is going, right, with this over personalization of things, and you have to have the balance between keeping the client as a client and having his privacy, and overwhelming him with asking him how is his dog with the name whatever, with you have find it somewhere, and asking him how is he doing. So we have really to balance it very well. It needs some brains behind that in order to set up frameworks, how to use that.
Yes.
Right? It can be very scary, dangerous, it can go really very far. So everyone needs really to make sure that you have a framework of how do you use this data, and when do you approach the customer with some datas which maybe he doesn't want to, just show to everyone.
Yeah.
But I guess culture plays a big part in that as well. Because some cultures are willing to give up that element of privacy to have simplicity in their eyes versus others.
Here comes in the training part, and Laurent said it as well, that you need to teach our young generation how to use that, right? Otherwise it can go into a direction where you don't want.
Yeah.
And then the whole thing is spoiled. So we have to be careful and balanced.
So that's a nice segue. Thank you into our my last topic for this panel, which was just around regional and cultural dynamics. And so how do guest expectations change? Maybe Laurent, you can get us started with just some thoughts on what you've seen in terms of regional nuances.
Customer don't want comfort only. A few years back, in my previous life, I used to work for a small company called Starwood, and we were in a conference, and they opened. They had a great. Any people from Marriott here in the room? Okay. So I'm sure that I'm not going to upset anybody else. But anyway, we know that Marriott bought Starwood because of SPG. And SPG, basically, they send I should not have said that? Okay, never mind. SPG is certainly, or was, the best loyalty program in the world. And we were in the room, we were like 2,000. And the people said, why do we stay in the hotel, first of all? Why do the customer come at the hotel? Well, they come to sleep, and they come also to have some personal encounter, should I say, okay? And that was 99.9% of the people. And therefore, you needed basically to have three things: a good bed, a good shower, and a good soundproofing, okay? Now, we obviously need to have internet because, if you don't have a high-speed internet, or internet, should I say, you're in trouble. That was comfort. What has changed drastically here today is because a lot of baby boomers are gone, the new generation, including the millennials and all the new gens which are coming on the market, are looking at something completely different. They are looking at that comfort, but they're also looking at the authenticity. They are looking also at the cultural aspect. You cannot build a hotel in New York exactly the same that you do in Dubai. The people from New York who come to Dubai don't want to do New York rooms. They want a Dubai room. So you need to have some authenticity. You need to have some sustainability. And when you look at the market, 72% of the millennium will choose a hotel which has a sustainability program versus the competition who doesn't have it. So we need to be sensitive about what we are doing. Siegfried was saying when you build a hotel, you need to look at what you are going to have in 4 years. Because things are changing. And the customer demand are also changing. You have some trend that basically you cannot ignore. And for example, the hospital industry grow approximately 5% a year. The wellness business industry of the hotel is actually growing at 10%. We created a brand called Maua. We started in Indonesia, okay? It's all about wellness, sustainabilities, cultures. The chef grow his own garden, he have his own spice. It's a completely different things. And we see a trend, and not only for honeymooner, but we see also multi-generations coming over. It's quite interesting to see that, for example, in our hotels over there, the numbers, that's why we created the residence with 2 or 3 bedrooms, because we see the grandparents traveling with the parents and the grandchildren now. We did not see that before, because the baby boomer was too busy working, actually.
Yes.
Yeah, and now that they have the time over there, they take the kids and the grandkids. And we are moving the numbers of hotel residents for example, at our portfolio grew up by 25% versus the other brand. So things are changing. We need to adapt. You know, let's put Mr. Darwin very high in the hospitality sky, because if we don't adapt and if we don't anticipate the future needs, even if we take the risk, yeah, we will fail behind.
Very good, thank you. So we're pretty much at time, but actually, Anna, I might just come to you just last, just to say, on regional differences, have you got any observations or things that you're finding, big differences between the different regions for your guests?
Well, across the regions, but mostly in the Americas, for example, and Laurent just touched base on that, is the multi-generational travel. And this is why we see the emergence of the branded residences. And we see Kerzner, for example, for One and Only, and now for Sairo, we are taking advantage of, or we're developing into that market, because there is a great need from our guests and the travelers. And then there is also the trend of the B-leisure. It's always been there, but now also with the design becoming, especially in our hotels, especially in One and Only, for example, you see that it's more residential. So you have to cater the design and the service at the same time so that you can deliver anything that the guest wants to do during their vacation, whether it was a vacation or whether they wanted to work. So these are trends that we see across the globe, but mostly it's the multi-generational travel.
Yeah, very good. Well, that we could talk for much longer. Actually, we've had lots of interesting topics there, but we're unfortunately at time for this session. I want to keep us on track for the rest of the day. So please join me in thanking Laurent, Siegfried, Tarek, and Anna for a really enjoyable keynote panel. Thank you.